"Dad, don't come to the hospital when I give birth. There's not enough room, and honestly, it's just better if it's only his parents there." That's what my daughter told me. Straight up. No hesitation. No shame. I remember just staring at the text, reading it again and again like maybe I missed a "just kidding" at the end. But no, that was it. Cold, clean, and final. Not, "I love you." Not, "We'll call you as soon as he's born." Not, "You've been the only parent I've had since I was 8 years old." Just, "Don't come." Let me be clear. This isn't a story about a deadbeat dad trying to worm his way back in. I raised that girl alone. Her mother died giving birth to her. I buried the woman I loved, held a screaming newborn in my arms, and swore to be the kind of father who never let her feel that hole in her life. And for over 2 decades, I kept that promise. So when my only daughter, my whole damn world, told me to stay away from the most important day of her life, yeah, it gutted me. And if you've ever been blindsided like that by someone you love, stick around. This story's just getting started. While you're here, tap subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. I've got more stories just like this, painful, true, and unbelievably satisfying by the end. Back to the night it happened. She texted me around 9 p.m., casual as hell, like she was canceling dinner plans. "We're heading to the hospital in the morning. Just wanted to say, don't feel like you need to come. It'll be crowded. We already told the nurses it'll be me, Ryan, and his parents in the room." I stared at that screen like it was in another language. We'd talked about this for months. I asked her, directly, if she wanted me there. She always gave vague answers. "We'll see. It depends." Now I knew why. It wasn't the hospital policy. I checked. I called and asked, pretending to be a curious grandfather-to-be. They allow 2 guests. She picked his parents. And me? I didn't even make the waiting list. I could have stayed home, saved myself the humiliation. But I'm not built that way. I packed a bag, drove 2 hours, and showed up at that hospital with flowers in one hand and a stupid gift bag in the other. Little onesies with dinosaurs and a note that said, "Can't wait to meet you." I wore the jacket she gave me for Christmas 2 years ago. Said it made me look respectable, like those grandpas in commercials. The receptionist smiled kindly, but it was the kind of smile people give when they're about to break bad news. "Sir, they asked for no additional visitors." I nodded. "Right. Makes sense. Tight space." She didn't respond. Just looked away. I sat in the hallway. A hospital hallway. White walls. Fluorescent lights. Buzzing machines. No chair, no coffee, just the humming of a vending machine and the occasional nurse walking by. And then, like something out of a bad movie, his parents walked right past me, laughing, holding a phone up, probably recording the moment. The mom gave me a tight little nod. The dad didn't even acknowledge me. They went straight in. I stayed. I don't know why. Pride? Hope? Maybe some part of me believed she'd change her mind. That she'd ask for me. That someone would say, "Hey, your dad's outside. Do you want to see him?" That never happened. I watched the hours pass on the wall clock across from the emergency exit. Watched as staff brought in lunch trays, coffee runs, and updates for the real family inside. Me? I was just background noise. And the thing is, I wasn't even angry. Not yet. I was hurt, yeah, but mostly confused. What did I do wrong? Was I too strict when she was a teen? Did I embarrass her with my old truck? Did I not fit the image she'd built with her picture-perfect in-laws? Or maybe it was simpler than that. I was her past, and they were her future. I almost left. I really did. But then something happened that changed everything. A nurse walked out looking worried. She said something into her headset. Then a second nurse rushed past, pushing a cart of medical supplies. My heart jumped. Something was wrong. And just like that, everything shifted. The night my daughter was born was the worst and best night of my life. My wife, Sarah, went into labor 2 weeks early. Things moved fast. Complications kicked in even faster. They rushed her into the OR, handed me a paper gown, and told me to wait. She gave me her wedding ring before they took her. Said, for luck. She never came back out. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. No final words. Just a nurse walking toward me with a newborn in her arms and tears in her eyes. "Mr. Blake, your daughter's okay. But I'm so sorry. We lost Sarah." And just like that, my world went from whole to shattered. I held that little baby, red, wailing, squirming, and made one promise. "I'll be everything you need." And I was. I was there for every bottle, every fever, every scraped knee. I learned how to braid hair from YouTube. I showed up to every parent-teacher conference in worn jeans and a button-down that still smelled like motor oil because I didn't have time to change after work. I passed on promotions so I could pick her up from school. I worked late into the night so she could go to dance class, get braces, go to prom. We didn't have much, but I made sure she had everything she needed, and just enough to feel normal around the kids with richer parents. She used to draw little pictures of us, me with my tool belt, her with her pigtails, and write me and my hero across the top. God, I still have those in a box in the attic. Every Sunday, we made pancakes shaped like animals. Every Christmas, we watched It's a Wonderful Life and cried at the same parts. She called me her forever teammate. Then came college. I sold my truck, the one I taught her to drive in, to help pay her tuition. I took out loans, picked up freelance repair work, ate beans and rice for months just to stretch every dollar. She never knew that behind her dorm room walls was a man back home pulling double shifts to keep her dream alive. And I was proud to do it. Because her success? That was my reward. She studied hard, got good grades, got a scholarship for her second year. And then she met him, Ryan. He seemed like a good guy at first. Polite, clean-cut, came from money, but didn't brag about it. His family, though? Different story. His parents were the country club type. Expensive shoes, forced smiles, lots of subtle digs that felt like compliments until you thought about them later. His mom once looked around my house and said, "It's so quaint." His dad offered me a used copy of How to Win Friends and Influence People as a birthday gift. Funny, right? The day after the wedding, his father pulled me aside and said, "No joke. It's amazing how well she turned out, considering." Considering what? That I was a mechanic? A widower? That I raised her in a house without granite countertops? After she married Ryan, things changed. First, it was fewer phone calls, then fewer visits. She said they were so busy, work, renovations, weekend trips with the in-laws. I noticed she stopped calling me dad and started saying, "Hey you," or "Hey old man," like it was a joke. One time I visited unannounced and saw her wedding photo on the wall, the huge, framed one in the living room. His parents were standing right behind the couple. I wasn't even in it. She said the photographer couldn't fit everyone. Right. I didn't push. I stayed quiet. Thought maybe she needed space to adjust. Maybe she'd come back around. So I poured myself into something else, something good. I started a foundation. Just a small thing at first. We raised money for NICUs across the state. It was my way of honoring Sarah, of turning our loss into something that could save others. Over time, the foundation grew. We funded new incubators, staff training, even helped build out a brand new neonatal intensive care unit, the same one my grandson would end up in, though none of us knew that yet. I never put my name on anything. No press, no speeches, just quiet giving, because it wasn't about credit. It was about making sure no other dad had to walk out of a hospital like I did, with a baby in one arm and an empty space in the other. And yet, after everything, after years of being her whole world, I was now the guy she didn't want in the room. I didn't match the aesthetic, didn't fit the image she'd built with her shiny new family. I was the man who carried her through every storm. And now, I was just an old photo in a drawer. Fading. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. Because the NICU I built, the one I funded in secret, would soon become the only place that could save her baby. And when things went sideways, and her picture-perfect in-laws were helpless, they'd all turn to the one man she told not to come. Ryan's family looked like they walked straight out of a magazine spread. You know the type: pressed slacks, pastel sweaters, smiles that don't quite reach their eyes. They didn't just attend country clubs, they were the country club. When I first met them, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. His mom, Linda, had that kind of permanent Botox smile, the one where you can't tell if she's happy to see you or just trying not to gag. His dad, Charles, shook my hand like he was measuring me. Quick squeeze, then a glance down at my shoes, like they told him everything he needed to know. I brushed it off. I told myself, they're just different. Give them a chance. But chances ran out fast. At the engagement party, Linda actually pulled my daughter aside, right in front of me, and whispered, "Don't worry, sweetie. Once you're married, you won't have to live like this anymore." This, meaning my house. The home I raised her in. The walls covered with her childhood photos. The beat-up couch where she watched Finding Nemo 1,000 times. Charles wasn't any better. He had a habit of sprinkling little insults into conversations, dressed up like observations. It's impressive you've done so well on a mechanic's salary, he told me once, sipping his wine. Shows a lot of resilience. I smiled back, said thanks. But deep down, I wanted to plant my fist right in his polished teeth. The wedding sealed it. Their side of the family showed up in designer suits and dresses that probably cost more than my yearly mortgage. My side, a handful of relatives in hand-me-down jackets, doing their best. And you know what? I was proud of my people. We were real. We were honest. But when the photos came back, I noticed something. In the big framed shot, the one my daughter hung above her fireplace, Ryan's parents were standing right behind them, glowing like royalty. I was off to the side, cropped halfway out, like an afterthought. When I asked about it, she said, "Oh, Dad, don't be sensitive. The photographer couldn't fit everyone." But somehow, they fit in just fine. Over time, my daughter started to mirror them. The girl who once begged me for ice cream at midnight now cared about appearances. The kid who wore mismatched socks on purpose was suddenly embarrassed by my scuffed boots. She'd roll her eyes when I cracked my old jokes, the ones that used to make her laugh until she snorted. Linda and Charles? They loved it. I could see it in their eyes, that smug satisfaction. Like they'd rescued her. Like she was theirs now. One Thanksgiving, Linda actually corrected my daughter at the table when she said, "ain't." She laughed and said, "Don't worry, honey. You'll grow out of that once you've been around us long enough." And my daughter laughed with her. That one cut deep. Still, I tried to keep the peace. I'd show up with pies, with gifts, with that stupid hopeful smile plastered on my face. Because no matter how they treated me, I wanted to be close to my daughter. I wanted to believe there was still a piece of her that remembered who held her up when no one else did. But slowly, steadily, I watched her drift further into their orbit. She started canceling plans with me. Started spending holidays at their vacation home instead of mine. Started talking like them, walking like them, living like them. And me? I became a shadow. The rough around the edges dad they tolerated, but never respected. So when the day finally came, the day she gave birth, it wasn't a surprise that I got the text. "Don't come. No room. His parents will be there." Of course they would. Of course it would be them, not me. The golden in-laws. The perfect couple who never missed a chance to remind me that I didn't belong. They'd be in the delivery room, holding her hand, cooing over the baby. They'd be in the photos. They'd be in the story she'd tell her child one day. Me? I'd be the man outside. The man with the flowers in the hallway. The man erased. But here's the thing about polished veneers. They don't hold up under pressure. When life gets real, when blood and fear and chaos hit the room, the shine wears off quick. And soon, very soon, those golden in-laws would find themselves standing helpless, useless, and terrified, while the man they pushed aside would step in and prove that when it matters most, pedigree means nothing. Action does. The day my grandson was born, I showed up at the hospital anyway. I knew I wasn't welcome. I knew she'd told me not to come. But some part of me couldn't stay away. This was my daughter. My blood. My grandson. I couldn't just sit at home and wait for a text like some distant relative. So I shaved, put on the jacket she once said made me look respectable, grabbed a bouquet of flowers, and drove 2 hours through pouring rain. I walked into that hospital with hope in one hand and fear in the other. The receptionist smiled politely when I gave my daughter's name. Then her face shifted, that awkward, pitying look people get when they're about to hurt you with words they didn't choose. "I'm sorry, sir, the family requested no additional visitors." I said, "But I'm her father." She glanced at her screen, then back at me, softening her voice like it would make the knife hurt less. "They already listed 2 support people. Her husband, and his mother. Not me. Not the man who raised her, sacrificed everything, gave up decades of his life so she could have hers. His mother. The woman who'd been in her life for a handful of years." I swallowed hard and nodded. "That's fine. I'll just wait out here." I sat down in the hallway. Cold bench. White walls. Fluorescent buzz above my head. It smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. I figured I'd wait a few hours. Maybe get a glimpse of the baby when they wheeled him out. Maybe she'd change her mind. Maybe someone would tell her, "Your dad's here." But no one did. An hour passed. Then 2. Nurses came and went, wheeling carts of supplies. I heard the muffled sounds of a woman screaming in labor. I prayed it wasn't her, but I knew it was. My hands shook as I tried to sip coffee from a vending machine cup. And then, I saw them. His parents. The golden in-laws. They strolled in like they owned the place. His dad in a crisp suit, holding a latte. His mom clutching a designer bag, smiling like it was a red carpet event. The nurse didn't stop them, didn't ask questions. She waved them through, straight into the delivery room. Meanwhile, I was the one sitting outside with a paper cup and cold flowers. You ever feel invisible? Like the world just decided you don't matter? That was me. I'd sacrificed 20+ years of my life to raise that girl. And now, when she needed strength, when she needed family, she picked them. The people who judged me, dismissed me, looked down on me. I pressed the flowers tighter in my hands until the stems snapped. At one point, a nurse walked by, glanced at me, and said, Are you not going in? I shook my head. They didn't want me there. She frowned, almost like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. Just kept walking. That stung worse than the rejection, the way strangers could see it, could feel the wrongness of it. Hours later, I overheard something I wasn't meant to hear. Two nurses whispering at the station. Isn't it strange she didn't want her dad in the room? One said. The other shrugged. She told me it would have been awkward. Awkward. That was the word she used to erase me from her life. Not unwanted. Not hated. Just inconvenient. Embarrassing. The kind of word you use when you're trying to justify cruelty with politeness. I sat there until my legs went numb, until my coffee turned cold. At one point, I thought about leaving. Thought about driving home, tearing off the suit, and pretending I never cared. But I couldn't, because no matter how much they wanted me gone, I was still her dad, and I was still his grandfather. So I stayed. Stayed in that hallway. Stayed invisible. Stayed humiliated. And when I finally heard the first cry of that baby echo through the corridor, tears streamed down my face. Not because I was part of the moment, but because I wasn't. And yet, destiny has a cruel way of twisting the knife. Because while they celebrated in that delivery room, smug, perfect, polished, they had no idea what was coming. No idea how quickly the celebration would shatter. No idea that the man they left in the hallway would soon be the only one standing between them and tragedy. I thought sitting in that hallway, listening to my grandson's first cry through a closed door, was as bad as it could get. I was wrong. Because what happened next showed me the truth. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't some hospital policy. It wasn't a mix-up. It was deliberate. The delivery was over. Nurses came and went. I was still glued to that cold bench, numb, when the door cracked open and Ryan stepped out. He looked tired but proud, like a man who thought he'd just climbed a mountain. For a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd wave me in. That he'd say, Come meet your grandson. Instead, he froze when he saw me. Oh hey, he muttered. His tone wasn't warm. It wasn't even polite. It was like he'd found an old coat he thought he'd thrown away. I've been here all night, I said quietly. How's she doing? She's good. Baby's good too. He shifted awkwardly, glancing over his shoulder like he didn't want to be caught talking to me. Then he added, thanks for coming. And just like that, he turned back inside. No invite. No, you want to see him? Just thanks. Thanks. And a closed door in my face. I sat there, fists clenched, pulse pounding in my ears. But the real dagger came a few minutes later. The door opened again, and this time it wasn't Ryan. It was his parents, the Golden in-laws. They were glowing. His mother's eyes were wet with tears. His father had that smug little smirk, like he'd just closed $1 million deal. Oh, he's perfect, she gushed, clutching her phone. I got the sweetest photo of him right after he came out. First ones to hold him, Charles added proudly. What an honor. We'll remember this forever. They didn't even look at me. They just breezed past, talking loudly about their moment, their grandson, their experience. And that's when it clicked. It wasn't just chance. It wasn't just space. It was planned. They wanted to be the first. They wanted to own the memory. And my daughter let them. I felt my chest tighten, like someone had tied a rope around my ribs. For years, I was everything to her. The one who held her when her mom died. The one who gave up nights, jobs, money, friendships, everything, so she could have a good life. And now? Now I was a ghost in the hallway while strangers soaked up the very moments that should have been mine. Not because I wasn't good enough. Not because I wasn't there. But because she chose them over me. Because I didn't fit the picture she wanted her life to be. I left that hospital with nothing. No photo. No hug. No introduction to my grandson. Just a crushed bouquet of flowers and a truth that weighed heavier than any load I'd ever carried. My daughter had betrayed me. She didn't just exclude me. She erased me. But betrayal has a way of planting seeds. As I drove home that morning, rain slamming against the windshield, I felt something burning inside me. Not just hurt, not just sadness, something sharper. Resolve. Because if she thought I was irrelevant, if she thought I was some outdated embarrassment, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. And fate, cruel, twisted fate, was already moving the pieces into place. 2 days later, I got a call from the hospital. My grandson wasn't breathing right. He needed specialized care. And suddenly, the very man they pushed out of the room was the only one who could help. 2 days after my grandson was born, the phone rang. It was the hospital, the same place that had left me out in the hallway, the same place where I'd been treated like an inconvenience. Mr. Blake, the doctor said, his tone tight. Your grandson, he's having complications. Breathing issues. We've admitted him to the NICU. My heart dropped into my stomach. Is he going to be okay? There was a pause. We're doing everything we can, but we're at capacity, and some of the equipment he needs isn't here yet. I thought it was important that you know. Important that I know. Not his in-laws. Not Ryan. Not even my daughter. Me. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that the very NICU their baby now needed was mine. Years earlier, after Sarah died giving birth, I'd made a promise. No father should ever walk out of a hospital with a baby in his arms and a coffin in the ground. I couldn't save my wife, but maybe I could help save someone else's. So I started small: donations, fundraisers, bake sales, car washes. Eventually, it grew. My foundation raised enough to buy new incubators, ventilators, monitors. We trained nurses. We brought in specialists. And finally, we built an entirely new NICU wing in one of the biggest hospitals in the state. I never put my name on it. No plaques, no speeches, no photo ops, just anonymous giving. That's the way I wanted it. And now, my grandson was lying in that very unit, breathing because of equipment I had paid for. The hospital staff knew. The doctors, the nurses, the director, they all knew who I was. So when things got critical, it wasn't Ryan they called. It wasn't the polished in-laws. It wasn't even my daughter. It was me. I drove back to that hospital faster than I'd ever driven in my life. My hands shook the whole way, not from fear of being excluded again, but from the weight of knowing I was the only one who could tip the scale. When I arrived, the NICU director met me at the door. Mr. Blake, she said urgently, we're doing everything we can, but we need an ECMO machine. Ours is down, and the nearest one is at another hospital 3 hours away. I didn't even hesitate. I'll make a call. See, I didn't just donate money. I built relationships. Every hospital administrator, every head nurse, every equipment supplier, they all had me on speed dial. I'd moved heaven and earth before to get machines into place, and I could do it again. Within 15 minutes, I was on the phone with another hospital across the state. Their director recognized my name instantly. Of course, Mr. Blake. For you, we'll have it on the road in 20. And they did. A portable ECMO machine, loaded into an ambulance, lights flashing, racing down the highway toward my grandson. Meanwhile, I walked into the NICU. The doctors didn't stop me. They didn't ask who I was. They knew. I watched my grandson, so small, so fragile, struggling inside an incubator. His tiny chest rising and falling like it weighed 100 pounds. Tubes, monitors, alarms beeping. I pressed my hand against the glass, whispering, "Hang on, buddy. Just hang on." Hours later, the machine arrived. The specialists I'd arranged to transport it came too. They set it up, connected it, stabilized him. And just like that, his breathing steadied. His color improved. The danger began to pass. The staff turned to me, their eyes filled with relief. "If it weren't for you," one doctor said, "we might have lost him." But I didn't say a word. I wasn't doing it for recognition. I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it for him, for my grandson. But deep down I knew the truth. The very people who told me I wasn't needed had just been proven wrong in the most brutal way possible. Without me, without the foundation I built, without the network I spent years creating, that baby wouldn't have made it. Not Ryan, not Linda, not Charles, not even my daughter. Me, the man they left in the hallway. And when they finally found out what I'd done, the looks on their faces would be something I'd never forget. You never forget the sound of monitors beeping in a NICU. It's a sound that digs into your bones, that keeps you on edge, Because every beep means a life balancing on the edge of a cliff. That night, I stood by the glass of my grandson's incubator, watching his tiny chest rise and fall when the alarms went off again. Doctors rushed in, nurses swarmed the room, and suddenly, the calm I'd felt knowing we'd gotten the ECMO machine shattered. His oxygen dropped. His tiny body trembled. One doctor barked orders. Another called for backup. I froze. My knees nearly buckled. But then I saw the look on the nurse's face, fear. And I knew. This was worse than before. Minutes later, Ryan and my daughter came running into the NICU. She was pale, eyes wide with terror. He looked like he'd been hit by a truck. "What's happening?" she cried. The doctor tried to explain, but she couldn't process it. "He's not responding as well as we hoped. We need additional equipment, more staff, and possibly a transfer to another facility." Ryan's parents appeared behind them, flustered, frantic. Linda was sobbing. Charles kept demanding answers like his authority could magically fix things. "Why wasn't this prevented?" he snapped at the staff. "This hospital should be better prepared." The staff ignored him. They had work to do. And then, one of the nurses turned to me. "Mr. Blake, can you make some calls?" It was like the world slowed. My daughter was crumbling. Ryan was useless. The Golden in-laws were panicking, throwing blame around like confetti. And in the middle of it all, the doctors looked at me. Not because I was family, not because I was welcome, but because I was the one person in that room who could actually do something. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and started dialing. First, I called a contact at a children's hospital 2 states over. They had a neonatal transport team with specialized ventilators. I'd helped them fundraise last year, so when I explained the situation, they didn't hesitate. "We'll send a mobile team immediately. They'll be wheels up in 30 minutes. Then I called a supplier I knew personally, a man who once told me I saved his niece's life with one of my donations. He owed me, and he came through. Within an hour, we had access to advanced monitors the hospital didn't even stock. Every call I made, people said yes. Not because of contracts, not because of politics, but because they knew me. Because over the years, I'd shown up when no one else did. Meanwhile, my daughter sat in a chair, sobbing into her hands. Linda knelt beside her, trying to offer comfort, but shaking too hard herself. Charles just kept pacing, muttering under his breath about lawsuits. And me? I was the calm one. The one moving pieces on the board. The one pulling in favors from every corner of the state. I wasn't a guest in the room anymore. I wasn't the awkward dad. I was the guy everyone depended on. Hours blurred together. Calls. Updates. Specialists arriving. Machines being wheeled in. The room was chaos, but it was controlled chaos, because I was directing it. At one point, the hospital director pulled me aside. "You're the reason this child has a chance," she said. "Without your foundation, without your contacts, we'd be lost right now." I nodded, too tired to feel pride. I wasn't doing this for credit. I was doing it because that baby, my grandson, deserved to live. By morning, his vitals began to stabilize again. The danger wasn't gone, but he was holding on. The NICU staff exhaled for the first time in hours. And that's when I noticed the silence. Ryan's parents were standing in the corner, pale, speechless. For once, Charles had no clever remark. Linda just clutched her designer purse like it was a lifeline. My daughter, she finally looked up at me. Her face streaked with tears, eyes red and swollen. For the first time in years, she didn't look at me with embarrassment. She looked at me with something else. Something like recognition. Because in that moment, when everything was falling apart, it wasn't the Golden in-laws who held it together. It wasn't Ryan. It was me. The man she'd left in the hallway. The man she thought didn't belong. The man who refused to walk away, even when she pushed him out. The hospital was quiet by dawn. The chaos of the night had faded into hushed voices, the steady rhythm of machines, and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. My grandson was stable. Not safe, not out of the woods, but stable. And after everything that had happened, that word felt like a miracle. The doctors told everyone to step out for a while so the NICU team could finish some procedures. Ryan and my daughter were escorted to a waiting room. Linda and Charles followed, pale and silent, clutching their phones like they could text their way out of this nightmare. And then the director turned to me. "Mr. Blake," she said quietly, "would you like to come in for a moment?" For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "Me?" She nodded. "You've earned this. And I think it would mean something." I followed her into the room, my legs heavy like I was walking through water. The beeping of monitors was steady now, calm. My grandson lay inside the incubator, impossibly small, wrapped in tubes and wires, but alive. For the first time since this nightmare started, I wasn't looking through glass. I was standing beside him. The nurse adjusted the settings, then smiled gently. "You can touch his hand if you'd like." My throat tightened. My fingers trembled as I reached in through the little port and let my finger brush against his tiny palm. And then it happened. His hand, barely the size of a walnut, closed around my finger. Weak, fragile, but holding on. I broke. Tears streamed down my face, hot and uncontrollable. I whispered, "Hey, buddy. I'm your grandpa. I know I wasn't supposed to be here, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." I thought about Sarah, about the promise I made the night she died. I'll be everything she needs. And somehow, in that moment, it felt like Sarah was there too. Like she'd guided me to this place, to this exact second, to keep that promise alive through her grandson. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about love. Pure, raw, unconditional love. And the irony of it all nearly broke me. I wasn't the first to hold my daughter when she was born. That was the nurses, because Sarah was gone and I was paralyzed with grief. But here, with her son, with my grandson, I was the first. Not because I demanded it, not because I forced it, but because when everyone else crumbled, I stood. A nurse slipped a chair beside me. "You can stay as long as you need." So I sat. For hours I sat, watching him breathe, whispering to him, telling him stories he couldn't understand but that I needed to say out loud. I told him about pancakes on Sundays, about the ducks at the park, about the time his mom drew me as a superhero. I told him that no matter what, I'd always be here, even if I wasn't invited, even if I was pushed aside, because that's what family does. Eventually, Ryan and my daughter were allowed back in. She froze when she saw me there, saw my finger inside the incubator, saw her son gripping me like I was the only steady thing in his world. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in years, guilt, and maybe shame. Ryan put a hand on her shoulder, but even he stayed quiet. No one dared to interrupt. No one dared to take him from me. And in that silence, I realized something. This wasn't about being first. This wasn't about winning. This was about showing up when it mattered. Because I wasn't the man they wanted in that room. But I was the man who was needed. The silence didn't last long. I was sitting by the incubator when my daughter finally turned toward me. Her shoulders were shaking, her eyes swollen from crying. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Tell you what?" I asked. That this." She gestured at the NICU, the machines, the staff, the whole wing. "Was you. That you built this." I exhaled, heavy, because it was never about me. Her tears fell faster. "Do you know how it feels to find out from the nurses that my dad is the reason my son is alive? Not from you, from them." I locked eyes with her, my voice breaking. "No, Emma. The real question is, do you know how it feels to be told I wasn't good enough to be in the room when he was born?" Her lips trembled. She turned away, but I didn't stop. "I was there for everything, Emma. Every scraped knee, every school project, every night you cried for your mom. I gave up jobs, sleep, my whole damn life to raise you. And still, in the most important moment, you chose someone else." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. "I just wanted it to be perfect. I wanted them to respect me, to think I belonged in their family. And you don't always fit that picture." The words cut like a knife. "I don't fit the picture," I repeated, jaw tight. I pointed at the incubator. "Take a good look at him. Do you think he cares about pictures? Or who has the bigger house, or the better suit, or the perfect family photo? He just wants to live. And the only reason he's alive is because I never stopped fighting, even when you pushed me away." Emma shook, crying harder. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." And just then, Linda and Charles walked back into the room. I turned to them, and suddenly the missing piece clicked into place. My voice dropped, cold and sharp. "It wasn't your idea, was it, Emma? Who whispered in your ear that I'd ruined the picture?" Emma froze. Her eyes flicked toward Linda, then Charles. Her shoulders slumped. "It was them," she whispered. "They told me it would be better if you weren't there. That if I gave them space, I'd finally look like part of their family." The air in the NICU grew so thick you could feel it. Only the beeping of the monitors filled the silence. I turned on them, stepping closer. "So that's it. You shoved me out of the delivery room to take center stage. You erased me, the man who raised her alone, so you could shine. And while you were busy posing for pictures, I was the one calling in favors, pulling machines across the country to keep your grandson alive. Linda went pale as a ghost. Charles tried to speak, but only opened and closed his mouth like a fish. And then the doctor, who had been adjusting a monitor, turned to face them. With respect, Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, without Mr. Blake's foundation, this unit wouldn't exist. Your grandson is alive because of him. Linda's mouth fell open. Charles's face flushed crimson, his fists clenched at his sides. For the first time, the Golden in-laws had no words. Emma lifted her head, tears streaming, but now there was fire in her eyes. She looked at them, then at me. You made me push my dad away. You stole that moment from him, and he saved my baby's life. Her voice cracked, but rang through the room like a hammer hitting glass. They didn't respond. They couldn't. And for the first time in years, the truth finally stood naked in front of all of us. I didn't need to add anything. I just stood there, breathing, letting the silence choke them. Because in that moment, Emma had said everything I'd been holding in for years. And that, in itself, was justice. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that night. But something inside me changed. The years of swallowing pain, of being treated like an afterthought, finally cracked. And this time, I didn't shrink back into silence. I stayed in that NICU every day until my grandson was stable enough to leave. I watched as the tubes came out one by one, as the monitors grew quiet, as his tiny breaths grew stronger. And when they finally let me hold him outside the incubator, I felt like I was holding the world in my arms. Emma was different too. She came to me, sat beside me, and whispered, "I don't deserve you, Dad." I shook my head. It's not about deserving. It's about showing up. That's what family is. And for the first time in years, she leaned into me and cried like the little girl I used to hold after Sarah died. The day of his discharge was supposed to be joyful, and it was. The hospital decorated the hallway with balloons. A photographer was there to capture the moment. The staff wanted to celebrate this tiny fighter going home. But of course, Linda and Charles tried to seize control. They marched right up to the front, straightened their clothes, and planted themselves where they thought the spotlight should be. "We should be in the family picture," Linda said sharply. But the nurse, smiling politely, shook her head. "Actually, we'd like the man responsible for this unit to be front and center. Mr. Blake, this moment belongs to you." And before anyone else could argue, they placed my grandson in my arms. The flash went off, and the picture that captured that milestone wasn't Ryan puffing out his chest, wasn't Linda and Charles grinning like they'd saved the day. It was me, holding my grandson, with my daughter standing by my side. The very image they had stolen from me in the delivery room was handed back in front of the entire staff. I glanced over at Linda and Charles. Their smiles faltered, their faces flushed. They stood there on the sidelines, powerless, humiliated, their perfect picture shattered. Because now everyone knew the truth. They hadn't been the saviors. They hadn't been the pillars of strength. They had been frauds. And the man they'd shoved into the hallway, the one they tried to erase, had been the one who truly mattered. Life since then hasn't been flawless. Ryan is still stiff and distant. Linda and Charles hover at the edges, trying to act important, but their influence is gone. Emma doesn't turn to them anymore. She turns to me. And my grandson? He's thriving. Every time he grabs my finger with his tiny hand, I feel like the universe is telling me, "You did it. You kept your promise." I didn't get the perfect family photo in the delivery room, but I got something better. I got to save a life. I got to show my daughter, not with words, but with actions, what being a father really means. And I got my place back. That, to me, is the sweetest revenge of all. And now I want to ask you, listening to my story, do you think I did the right thing? Would you have exposed them like I did, or just walked away and let them stew in silence? What would you have done in my place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and share your opinion. Because trust me, there are plenty more stories like this coming your way.